Learning English through real stories is a game changer. You don't just study words, you experience them. Your brain remembers better when it's enjoying the story. So instead of memorizing boring rules, sit back, listen, and let English come to life naturally. If this sounds like your style, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and hit the bell so you won't miss the daily stories we post here. Sophie had always worn glasses. She couldn't see very far without them. Street signs, chalkboards, even movie screens looked blurry. But she didn't mind wearing them. In fact, she thought they gave her face a little extra charm. She had never been to Europe before. This trip to Paris was her first time traveling alone outside her country. She had planned carefully, packed lightly, and made a list of all the places she wanted to visit. At the very top of that list was the Eiffel Tower. It had been her dream since she was little. She had posters of it on her bedroom wall and keychains shaped like it in her school bag. Seeing it in person felt like something magical. On her second day in Paris, she decided it was the perfect time to go. The weather was cloudy, but not rainy. The sky looked soft, and the air was cool enough to wear her favorite jacket. She took the metro, followed the signs, and soon found herself standing in front of the famous tower. Even though she had seen 100 pictures of it before, nothing compared to seeing it with her own eyes. It was taller than she imagined, and the iron beams looked like a giant web stretching into the clouds. Sophie stood in line, feeling her heart beat a little faster. She adjusted her glasses, held her small bag close, and kept looking up. When it was her turn, she took the elevator instead of the stairs. She wanted the full experience. The elevator ride was smooth but exciting. As it rose, she looked out through the glass walls and saw the city growing smaller beneath her. The buildings, bridges, and trees looked like they were made of paper. It was beautiful. Finally, the elevator reached the top. Sophie stepped out and walked slowly toward the edge. There were railings to keep visitors safe, and the view stretched in every direction. The Seine River curved through the city like a silver ribbon. Tiny cars moved on wide roads, and the rooftops looked like tiles on a giant quilt. She was amazed. She leaned on the railing and closed her eyes for a moment. The wind was gentle up there, but strong enough to make her hair move. She smiled, took a deep breath, and opened her eyes again. Then it happened. She felt something shift on her face. Before she could react, her glasses slipped forward and fell right off her nose. She reached out, but it was too late. They had fallen between two metal bars and disappeared down into the open air. For a second, she just stood still. She didn't say anything. She didn't move. She just stared at the space where her glasses had been. The wind still touched her face. The city still looked beautiful. But now, it was all a blur. She leaned forward and looked down. Of course, she couldn't see very far without her glasses. Everything below looked like soft shapes and colors. It was as if someone had painted the city with water and then smudged it. Her heart sank. She knew those glasses were not expensive. But they were important. She used them every single day. And now they were gone, flying down the Eiffel Tower like a strange gift to the streets below. Sophie didn't cry. She just stood quietly, trying to think. What now? The rest of her day was supposed to include walking tours, museum visits, and maybe a pastry at a small cafe. But now she couldn't read signs or recognize faces. She could still move around, but everything looked soft and far away. She slowly made her way to the elevator again, holding onto the railings carefully. Each step felt different without being able to see properly. She got into the elevator and rode down without saying a word. Back on the ground, she stood near the base of the tower, hoping maybe, just maybe, someone had found the glasses. But no one came. And the staff couldn't search below the tower easily. It was a huge space with people moving all around. So she left. She walked slowly, using her phone to zoom in on maps. She could see enough to get back to her hotel. Once in her room, she lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. For the first time on the trip, she felt lost. But after a few minutes, she sat up and opened her bag. She had packed a tiny backup pair of glasses just in case. They weren't very strong, and they were a little old, but they worked. She put them on, looked around, and smiled. The world was still a bit blurry, but better than nothing. That afternoon, she continued exploring. She walked through a park, bought a small sandwich, and even took pictures. They weren't perfect pictures, but the feelings in them were real. By the evening, she sat by the river and watched boats go by. The light reflected on the water, and everything felt peaceful. She couldn't see every detail, but she could feel the moment. Sophie realized that sometimes, losing something leads to something else. She had been so focused on seeing the perfect view from the top of the tower. But now, without perfect sight, she noticed different things. The way people laughed nearby. The sound of shoes on stone paths. The smell of bread from a nearby bakery. She was still in Paris. She was still having an adventure. And she would never forget the moment her glasses took flight from the top of the Eiffel Tower. Without even noticing, you just learned a lot of English. You saw how to describe events naturally, express feelings, and explain problems clearly. These are the kinds of sentences and words real people use in daily life. That's the beauty of stories. You enjoy them, and your brain picks up the language without pressure. If you enjoyed this one, make sure to give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. We post new English learning stories every single day. Now it's your turn. Have you ever lost something important while traveling? Leave a comment and tell your story. We'd love to hear about it. See you in the next one.